I opened a credit card for one reason, to keep my mother from losing her home. My name is Marissa, and I thought helping her was what good daughters did, even if it meant borrowing money I barely had. The limit was only $100, but I was proud of it. At least I could cover groceries, medicine, and the electric bill when her paycheck came up short. 4 days after the card arrived, my sister sent a photo from Hawaii. She was standing barefoot beside an infinity pool, sunglasses glowing in the sun, champagne untouched beside her. I stared at the screen until my stomach tightened. When I asked where she got the money, she smirked. "Thanks to your credit card. Don't worry. I only spent $100,000. I actually laughed. My card only has a $100 limit. Did you check the name? Her smile disappeared. Before she could answer, Mom walked into the kitchen holding a gold card between 2 fingers. She looked at me, then at my sister, and whispered, "That isn't your card, Marissa." Then she turned it over. My name was printed across the back. But the account number was unmistakably mine too. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. I reached for the gold card, but Mom pulled it against her chest. Her expression wasn't guilty. It was frightened. "Where did you get that?" She swallowed. "Your sister brought it home last night." My sister folded her arms. "Because Mom needed it." "That card has a $100 limit." "I know what you told me." She sounded almost bored. I grabbed my phone and opened the banking app. The screen loaded slowly, then showed a balance that made my hands go cold. $100,000. Available credit, $0. I refreshed it twice. The numbers stayed there. "That's impossible." My sister's face changed. Not panic. Recognition. Mom sat down hard. I called the number on the back of the card. After verification, the representative explained that the account had been upgraded to a premium line of credit 3 weeks earlier. A replacement card had been issued. Multiple purchases had already cleared, including airfare, hotels, jewelry, and luxury rentals. I asked who authorized the upgrade. The representative paused. "Your mother." I looked at Mom. She covered her mouth. My sister whispered, "She said you gave permission." Mom started crying. Then the representative added one sentence that made the room feel airless. "There's also a second authorized user listed on your account." I stared at my sister. It wasn't her name. It was Mom's. I couldn't speak. Mom's tears kept falling, but something inside me had gone completely still. I asked the representative to read the authorized user's information again. He did. Mom's full name. Then he mentioned the address attached to the account. It wasn't mine. It was my sister's apartment. I looked at her. "Why is your address on my credit account?" She stared at Mom. That was the moment I understood they had been having conversations without me. Mom finally whispered, "Your sister said she could fix everything." "Fix what?" She wouldn't answer. My sister stepped forward. "You don't understand what happened." "Then explain it." She took a breath. Mom had accumulated debts I didn't know about. Medical bills, loans, overdue taxes. My sister had discovered them and promised to help. But instead of using her own money, she'd convinced Mom to open the premium account using my identity. My stomach turned. "You forged my authorization." "No." Mom signed. I looked at Mom. She nodded through her tears. "But you told me the card was only for groceries." I was ashamed. My sister's voice cracked. "I thought I could make enough money back before you noticed." "How?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were receipts for Hawaii, hotel deposits, and something else. A property contract. My name was printed beneath the buyer's signature. I stared at the contract until the letters blurred. "This isn't real." My sister wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom whispered, "Please, Marissa." I flipped through the pages. The property was a small beachfront condo in Oahu. Purchase price, $420,000. Down payment, $100,000. My credit account had funded the down payment. My name appeared as the buyer. My sister's name appeared as the occupant. I felt something inside me break. "You bought her a house." My sister finally looked up. "I bought us a future. Using my identity." "You had good credit." "I didn't." That sentence hurt more than the theft. I called the bank again and requested every document connected to the account. The representative told me they could freeze further spending while investigating the fraud, but the existing charges would remain disputed until reviewed. Then I noticed Mom's hands trembling. "Mom, what aren't you telling me?"
She looked toward my sister.
My sister shook her head.
Mom began crying harder.
Finally, she said, the condo wasn't for her.
I couldn't breathe.
Then who was it for? Mom reached into the folder and pulled out a second contract. The buyer's name wasn't mine.
It wasn't my sister's either. It was the name of a man I'd never heard before. And beneath it was Mom's signature. I read the man's name twice.
Who is Daniel? Mom's face collapsed. My sister whispered, Mom, don't. That was enough.
I called the bank investigator whose number appeared in the fraud report.
While we waited, I demanded the truth. Mom finally admitted Daniel was her boyfriend. My knees weakened. She had been seeing him for nearly 2 years, hiding him from me because she knew I would object. He had debts, too. Worse, he'd convinced her that investing in Hawaiian property would solve everything. My sister had discovered the plan and joined him. You both stole my identity for a stranger.
My sister shook her head.
I thought I was protecting Mom. By helping him spend $100,000.
He promised he'd repay it. I almost laughed. Then my phone rang. The investigator said something that changed everything.
Ms. Marissa, we found the original application. Your signature was digitally copied, but the device used to submit it was registered to your mother's home.
I looked at Mom. She began sobbing.
But the investigator wasn't finished. There's another applicant attached to the file. Someone used your social security information to establish a second line of credit.
Who? He paused.
Then he gave me a name.
It was Daniel.
And the account balance was already $287,000.
I called the police before I called Mom again.
Not because I wanted her arrested, but because I finally understood that love without boundaries can become permission for someone else's destruction. The investigator asked whether I wanted to file a formal complaint.
I said yes.
Mom covered her face.
My sister looked at me like I had betrayed her instead. You don't have to do this, she whispered.
I already did. Then she revealed something worse. Daniel had been pressuring Mom for months. He knew about her debts, knew she would do anything to keep him from leaving. I felt sick, but I refused to look away. The officer took copies of every document, including the condo contract and application. Before we left, Mom grabbed my wrist. Please don't let him hurt your sister. I looked at her and realized she still thought protecting my sister meant protecting her from consequences. At the station, I learned the second account had already been transferred to collections.
That meant Daniel wasn't finished. He had found another lender using my information.
But this time, the application contained a delivery address I recognized immediately.
It was my sister's new house in Hawaii.
I flew to Hawaii with one suitcase and the evidence folder strapped inside my carry-on.
I wasn't going there to confront my sister.
I was going there because the lender had traced the latest application to her address, and I needed to see who was actually living there. When I arrived, the condo looked exactly like the photographs she'd posted.
Ocean view.
White walls. Expensive furniture.
Then the door opened. Daniel stood there. He wasn't surprised to see me.
You finally figured it out, he said. My sister appeared behind him, crying. I stepped inside and noticed something on the dining table, 3 passports. Mom's. My sister's.
And mine. My stomach dropped.
Daniel had planned to disappear using my identity while leaving Mom and my sister responsible for the debt.
But he had made one mistake.
He hadn't realized the bank investigator had already frozen every account connected to my identity. His expression changed when I told him, "You can't freeze what you don't own." I smiled for the first time in days.
I don't have to.
I placed the evidence folder on the table. The federal fraud investigator already has copies. Daniel's face went pale. Then my sister whispered the words I had been waiting to hear. Marissa, I was wrong. But outside, police lights were already washing across the windows. The police entered quietly, but Daniel's confidence disappeared instantly.
He tried to explain everything as a misunderstanding.
The officers didn't argue. They simply placed the documents in evidence bags and asked him to turn over his phone. My sister stood frozen beside the window. I watched her cry, but I didn't rush to comfort her. For the first time, I understood that forgiveness wasn't something I owed simply because we shared blood.
Mom arrived the next morning. She looked smaller than I remembered. "I'm sorry," she said. I believed her.
But believing someone was sorry didn't erase what they had done. The fraud investigation cleared my name. The stolen accounts were closed, the condo purchase was cancelled, and Daniel faced charges for identity theft and financial fraud. My sister sold everything she could and used the money to repay part of the damage. Mom and I eventually spoke again, carefully, without pretending trust could return overnight.
I kept my original credit card. Its limit was still $100. I never increased it.
Months later, I stood outside Mom's house while she handed me the last envelope of repayment money.
She was crying. So was I.
But this time, the tears weren't from betrayal. They were from finally knowing that protecting myself hadn't made me cruel. It had made me free. And for the first time, I walked away without looking back.